And we're live. Julie, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to
Hey,
the
Noah,
podcast.
thanks for having me.
Of course, I know when I met you the first time, your story kind of intrigued me. And then I got to work with you a couple of times at a couple inspections, and I enjoyed getting to know you and hearing what you're all about. And I thought people would too. So I'm glad we could take the time. It's not going to be super long today, but I thought it'd be neat for people to just take a peek and hear what you're all about and what you have to offer people and where you came from. So if you don't mind, we'll jump right in and just let us know like what's your story. And I know that real estate wasn't necessarily your first rodeo. So how did
Nope.
that all happen?
So, if we go back to when I started, my business career, I started in insurance. That didn't last too long. And then I moved over to medical equipment. I was on the inside sales side, and then I moved into business operations. I spent a long time learning how a business works, the finance side of it. And that was also actually when I went to college. So I was working full time and got my bachelor's degree. I still got it done in a little over 4 years. So I was pretty proud of myself for that.
Wow.
And that was really like a big corporate setting. And I got a bit of a burnout there. And my dad was hiring at the time, so he's got his own remodeling company. Him and my brother, my brother is now co-owner, but at the time he wasn't. And he asked me if I'd come over because he needed someone to help straighten out the business side of it. So they had the construction side down, but he really wanted to grow the business itself, get the processes in place, make sure we had good customer service, the financial side also. So I worked with them for about 10 years. And then I just, your personality changes as you get older. And, at some point in your life, you might be okay with someone telling you what to do, when to do it, how to do it. This is how it should be done. And then you just get to that point where you're like, I know a lot. I want to be my own boss. I want to get out there, do my own thing. I have all these ideas of what I want to accomplish and how I want to see it done. I'm like, I need to find a career where I can be my own boss.
So you're a
And
rebel.
I like to break out, I don't want my dad and my brother telling me what to do all the time.
That's fun.
So, being in the remodeling side, I found that I just loved, the residential home aspect of it, seeing the different construction that's out there, the different houses, the areas, and the people that live in the houses, the families, the single people, the, adults, whatever it might be. And, I was like, let's try real estate because I thought there were so many aspects of being a realtor that I could really take my past experiences and kind of mold it to that. The one gap that I had was the sales side. So I've never been, really, I don't really put myself out there a lot, so having to, try and push sales. I still haven't quite conquered that one.
Hey, what is
I'm,
sales anyway? Does anyone really even know what that is?
I know. And for an introvert, it's really hard to figure that out. But what I do know is I'm a people person. I like those small individual relationships. And so, having the finance side, the remodeling side, knowing how I like to have those small, relationships with people, that's kind of what makes me tick. And, I get to set my pace, how hard I work, if I need easier days, lighter days, and just really explore different interests that I have being a realtor. So
So you
it's a
worked
long
with
story of
your
how I got here.
no, no, it's actually a short story, but I think you left out a lot of details, but that's okay. So you worked with your dad and your brother. And so
Yep.
you were doing more of the paperwork and the business side of things, and they were actually ripping out the floors or what?
So my dad was more of the like lead designer sales guy. He obviously, so the company was a pretty good size. It wasn't huge, but it also wasn't small. When I started, there were 4 people that worked there. I was part-time. And by the time I left, there were 9 people.
Wow.
And it had, almost quadrupled in size. We moved out of my dad's basement, so I was working in my mom's basement most of the time, into our own office space. They had hired 2 other designers. And so, yeah, I did some of the design. I did the project management. As the company grew, we would implement like software programs, computer programs, finance programs. So, I would set those up, get them rolling, work with the customers, get the the quotes done,
Hmm.
work with suppliers, check if a fire came up that, something that needed to be tracked down, I would do that. So,
Wow. So they were probably sad to lose you.
oh, there was quite a meltdown that day. I gave him a 7-month notice, Noah, and there was still a meltdown.
That's actually pretty funny. Well,
Yeah.
it had to come. Would you say that your experiences doing that and also reaching back into the insurance, the medical side of things, like the more corporate world that you were in for a while, did that play a part, or in preparing you for like what you're doing now with steering your own ship?
Absolutely. So, every step of the way, each job that I had, it fit me and my needs at the time, what I wanted to do. I don't sit still in a job for very long. I tend to feel like I've conquered the world and it's time to move on to the next one after like 2 or 3 years. And so for me to have stayed in any job or any company for 15 years or 10 years, that's really quite an accomplishment. But each step of the way, there was something new that I learned that I can apply to this job. How do you carefully keep track of your receipts, your mileage? Because I'm running a business, so I still need to keep track of everything on the business side. It's not just working with customers, but I put together advertising. What's my marketing plan? How do I make sure I'm making money and
Hmm.
still being accountable to all the right aspects of taxes and so on.
Well, and I suppose that, I mean, technically with what you're doing, being a realtor, it's not like you get a weekly paycheck. And
No,
so you have to manage that whole side of things, which I think a lot of people struggle with sometimes when they first get started, because it's not like, especially when you're new, you might not have a deal coming once a week or even once a month. It's like
right.
popcorn. You might have three in 1 month and then nothing for 4 or 5 months, but you're working that entire time. So how have you navigated that?
So, people told me ahead of time that exact same thing that you just said. You're not getting a steady paycheck. So make sure you have a good, nest egg or something to fall back on for at least the first year. And, you hear people say that, like you listen to your parents, you're like, yeah, 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 like you really know what you're talking about. But they did, believe it or
Oh,
not.
yeah.
I know. So I did. I made sure I had some money that we could fall back on, a savings, kind of set up for that. And then I also had to supplement with, little side jobs, little side hustles here and there to earn some extra income. But, once you get those first few commission checks and you're just like, oh,
Hmm.
I got to make this happen more often,
Yep.
because it's
Yep.
it's just so satisfying, not just seeing the paycheck itself, but the pride in knowing that I helped these customers sell their house, buy the perfect house. We got through it, with some hiccups, some pains, but I've got happy clients in the end. And that's really what makes that final paycheck really worth it, not
I've
just
seen
the
some of your
dollars
clients. I
on
would
it.
say that from experience, I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I try and fit my personality to my clients. Not that I mimic it, but sometimes, it's like the yin and the yang. So you have to offset it a little bit. So it's fun when you first meet someone and you're working with them, you're trying to figure out, okay, what are they? Are they, going to be really outgoing, or are they nervous? And then you try, and if they're a nervous person, you be that rock for them. If they're just out there having fun, have fun with them, but also, like hold their hand and guide them along, like, okay, this is some serious stuff.
So reading
So
people, you think is pretty important?
yes, absolutely. Because if you misread them, you misunderstand, you misinterpret their
Hmm.
intention or what they really wanted, you could have some big problems on your hands.
how was the COVID years for you?
It was really interesting in the beginning. You're never quite sure. Are you an essential industry? Can you get out there and do anything? And there were some changes made. It was a bit scary in the beginning, because so many people were used to going into the office. And that, there was a lot of camaraderie when you go into an office versus when you're just working from home.
Hmm.
And you kind of missed out on that for a while, and until
Hmm.
people were able to go back in the office. And clients are nervous, can we go into the
Right.
house? How do we do this? If
Right.
they're selling their house, do I want people to be coming in? So
Yep.
it slowed
Well,
things down a bit.
yeah, and also even the sellers. Like if you weren't working with the sellers yourself, I know that there were a few times just during that time period when I'd go in to do an inspection, I had to check ahead of time with every single one to find out what the wishes were of, the homeowners. And sometimes we'd get there and there'd be a sign on the front door saying, here's what you have to do, here's what you can't do. And it was an interesting dynamic, just seeing how
Yeah.
everyone handled it a little differently. And I'm just glad it's in the rearview mirror.
I know there's still some things that are lingering, in the industry that changed for COVID that are still there. And it's like, okay, it's time to maybe let some of these go and open it back up again. But
Probably depends on your area.
yeah, that could
And
be.
and speaking of area, just for those of you who are out there who don't know Julie yet, Julie, what is your area? Where are you from, and where do you like to work primarily here in
Yep. So,
Wisconsin?
right. Yep. I am in Waukesha. I've been in Waukesha for a very long time, about 26 years. Was in New Berlin before that. And I primarily like to keep my business to Waukesha County
Hmm.
and parts of Milwaukee County, although I do have a sale going on in the, oh, I'm so bad with directions, the western side of Jefferson County.
Okay,
Yes. So
sure,
closer to us, right?
sure, yeah. So
I'm trying to pick. Okay.
toward Madison.
Yeah. Where's Lake Michigan?
Yeah, right.
Okay, in that
You
case,
remind
it's
me.
the eastern side of Jefferson County.
Oh, I got you. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's actually not too far from me.
Okay.
Yep. So
How is the family?
they're doing well. Yeah, growing like
Good.
crazy. Yeah. So
Good.
our sixth Archer, he's 9 months old now. I think he has 3 or 4 teeth. Life is good.
I
It's
saw him when he was just a little peanut and your wife
Yeah,
was
you remember
carrying
that?
him.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we came. I think that was a pre-listing inspection we did. I did for you with your dad, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
one
we
of our
came
flip
through.
houses.
That was, which I'd like to talk about in just a second. But my
Sure.
kids, it's funny, they always ask, Dad, can we? You're going to an inspection? Can we come with you? And it's usually no, you can't come with me on this. But that day when we came for that one, I think I cleared it with you ahead of time, and it was just fun because that was more of a walkthrough type thing anyway. But
Yeah.
we went
A little
through, and they
casual.
thought it was really cool to kind of walk in a strange house that was somewhat under construction and see what's going on. How does that work with your dad with the company? Because I know you guys are still working together. Because I know you were doing that
Yep.
house. How does what does the world of flipping houses look like for you guys? Because I know you do it well, and being an inspector, I see flip houses frequently, and they're usually sometimes humorous, but usually the quality of the workmanship is not there because it was just to try to turn it around, band-aids on everything. How do you guys view it, and how do you run things?
Yep. So that house that you walked through for us, that was our first. That was our first flip house. So we were kind of navigating the waters just from a financial aspect because my dad has been in the construction and remodeling industry for almost 30 years now. And he's a licensed general contractor in the state of Wisconsin. So he has a very solid background on, what could this house become? And then we have to take, my financial side and realistic side and be like, okay, but this is what we can afford. Um, and so we always do what we can to make the house safe, functional, and obviously it's got to look nice. So when we walked into that first house, there were rodents, there was a lot of rot going on, but there were also, the home hadn't been updated in like 30 years. So we did some of the major pieces of it, but we wanted to make sure that, holes were sealed, gaps were filled, any major repairs, the roof was checked out. We had the chimney and the fireplace checked out. The basement was pretty solid, but we did a little bit of work on the gutters to make sure the drainage was good. And what I found funny was there was a vanity in one of the bathrooms that we were able to pull it out in one whole piece. And I'm like, let's just stick it on. What did I put it on? Facebook Marketplace and see if we can sell it, just get 25, $30 for it. Well,
Hmm.
someone did come and buy it and they are flippers. And she's like, yeah, all we do are lipstick flips. And I'm like, okay,
She
what's
said
that?
that.
Yes, she did. And so it's what it sounds like, lipstick on a pig. So she bought this, nasty old vanity cabinet and she's like, I'll just paint it and then we'll install it at one of our flips. And I'm just like, okay, to me, this is, a piece of garbage you just put in a cabin up north or something. So, that was a bit eye-opening to see what people were willing to put in a flip.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So
The
how do you
project that
guys? Yeah. So who does the work
Oh,
for
yeah.
your
So
projects?
my husband and I do a lot of the work, unless it comes to mechanical. So electrical work, plumbing work, HVAC, that we will hire a licensed contractor for.
Hmm.
We make sure all the permits are pulled on the house, the building permit, if there's any, wall changes going on, electrical, plumbing. So we make sure it's fully permitted as it needs to be. But other than that, and I also have a absolutely
Got it.
wonderful father-in-law. So he is retired and he will come along. His name is Jim, and he is the handyman of the century. And so he knows a little bit of everything and he is just extremely helpful. He works for free, but we do compensate him
Hey,
with
there you go.
tools and dinners and stuff. I know.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, so it's
So
actually a really a family business, is what it is.
it is, yeah, it's all about family, and, my husband and I, we spend a lot of time together. I like to
Hmm.
do, the design part of it, so, when we find the house that we're gonna flip, I put drawings together. I've, got design programs for that. I pick out the finishes, what it's gonna look like, some of the colors, but I also have to make sure I'm asking his opinion, otherwise, you know, he's gotta be involved in that way too. I can't just make him the grunt the whole time, so,
That's cool. So you actually
yeah.
you portion part of your time into that um, business or those activities as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yep. So I'd say the first 3 weeks before we actually close on the house, I'm spending all that time chasing down materials, products, making sure they stay within our price. And I don't just go to Home Depot and buy things. I try and buy, from more quality suppliers,
Yep.
to make sure that we've got really good product.
Well, I think that
Nothing
buyers are
against
getting
Home Depot. We buy plenty from Home Depot, but
sure, sure, sure. Well, there are different levels of quality in every store, right?
yep.
But I would say like buyers, from what I can tell, like from the clients that I have, they're definitely more savvy than they used to be years ago, and they're becoming wise to what you just discussed or were describing before, and they can tell when something is cheap versus when it's done well. And I can certainly tell right when you walk in, or you know, lift that rug up off the floor and actually see what's going on. It's
Yes.
it's always an adventure, that's for sure.
Yeah, so the flip house we're working on right now is in Hales Corners, and we had hardwood floors professionally installed in the kitchen, but the rest of the house was already hardwood floors, and so we're trying our hand at sanding and refinishing. And so we did the whole upstairs, sanded it down, refinished it, and two of the rooms look just absolutely awful. I mean, we're not perfect, right? So tomorrow I'm going to spend my day resanding and
Oh
refinishing on my hands and
man.
knees. But I mean, we want it to look good.
Well,
My
that's
husband's
saying
like, oh, just,
yeah, that's saying
I
something
just,
because you could find any number of go on marketplace or go on some of the advertising platforms there are out there, and there are a bunch of people advertising. A lot of them aren't licensed or experienced in any way, and they're saying, hey, I'll come and work for do this project for you for $20 an hour, and you just say good, do it, and then you don't care anymore because you're getting rid of it, you're dumping the house. And it's just cool to hear that you actually put yourself into some of these projects, which
yeah,
means there's a pride of the workmanship there that's not present a lot of times.
yeah, yep, very true.
So since you've been in the industry, what would you say is something that, like, if you had the magic button or the magic wand, what would you like to see improve in the industry? If you think there is something that could get better, what do you think that would be?
So the real estate industry,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
yeah. So what I find is people are very hesitant to communicate. It's a
People as
very
in clients or agents with each other or what?
agents with each other.
Okay.
So, and there are plenty of legal reasons for that.
Hmm.
But, when you don't have the communication that I'm used to be quite honest, when I was in the corporate world, you'd hash out everything
Right.
until everyone's exhausted. And here, so much of it is, what are you implying by filling out this legal form? or, you're wondering, should I have done this or that? There's not a lot of talking about things. And I know you can't talk about everything, but just being a little bit more open with each other and collaborate a little bit more, I think would go a long way. Part of the problem is also we're all independent contractors. We all run our own business,
Right.
so everyone's competition. But at the same time, you're really working for the client. You want to make sure everything is done properly for them. So,
How do you think, is there anything you can do or other people can do, people listening to this podcast, that can make that better or improve that? Or how do you think that could be accomplished?
yeah, I mean, just don't be afraid to pick up the phone and just make a phone call. It's not like you've got to, spill the beans on everything, but just making it a little bit more personal. You are dealing with someone else on the other end, and they're not your enemy. They're your coworker or your counterpart at the time.
Right.
So just don't be afraid to call and talk to them, or just ask questions. Make it personal.
Do you think we try to keep it too business-like and we're actually in a people business, and that doesn't always marry well, does it?
I feel like people think they're working for the CIA or MI6. Everything's not top secret. It's
That's
you know
oh yeah, I've seen that happen for sure.
yeah,
Wow.
we're not that special.
So what would you say, like, if you had to give advice to someone, a newer agent, say getting in, either just thinking about getting into the business, someone who's maybe been in for a year or two, um, you went through that phase, all those phases, and
Hmm.
we've seen a lot of people get into the industry over the past couple of years because everyone said, "Oh, the market's so hot. Now's the perfect time to get into real estate." So then everybody did, all of a sudden realizing, "Whoa, it's not what I thought it was going to be, maybe. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people." And there was a big decline or a big drop off in the last 2 years or
Yeah.
so. People coming in and just getting discouraged or realizing that it's more work than they thought. Like talked about, the paycheck's not showing up every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever. Um, what advice would you give someone coming in, and what did you personally deal with? What were some of the doubts and fears you had, and how did you get over them?
So you cannot be in it for the money. I mean, you see all the TV shows out there and you think, oh, real estate agents, they're just throwing out the cash. They got all kinds of money. You can't be in it for that reason. That's not going to get you anywhere. People are going to see that you're going to be hard to work with, and you're going to lose your motivation very quickly, because the money takes at least 12 months, if not longer, to start flowing.
Really?
You have to, yeah, absolutely. You have to be in it because you love people, you like working with them, you like real estate in general. You have to be self motivated and be your own boss, um, and just keep yourself going. So if it's something that you love, even if it's really difficult to get going, you got to stick with it and keep going. So, if you're like, yeah, I'm going to be an agent because I want to make, a ton of money in the next 2 years, it's not going to happen. You're building a business from the ground up,
Hmm.
unless you walk into an agency where they hand you all the leads, but
Sure.
that's
That's not
not likely to
typical.
happen. No, not at
Well,
all.
and plus things are going to happen you couldn't plan. And I know, even the one I'm thinking of, one in particular, a client you had where everything was good, accepted offer, inspection went through, and then the financing fell through.
Yeah.
I remember that story, and like, as far as you were concerned, that deal was as good as done, and we were good. And then
Yeah.
that last thing you could never have planned, just that last, the chink in the cog in the wheel, and then
And I mean, you get so close, right? And I mean, you
yeah,
cannot count on the money until you're sitting at the closing table. So
right.
you can't count on the money just because an offer's in hand.
Yep. Do you have people that you can go to when you have problems or questions within the industry, and have
I
had you had
do.
people that helped you?
I do. Absolutely. So I actually interviewed a few real estate agents who are not part of the brokerage that I'm a part of before I got into it. So they were,
Nice.
one of them was one of my sister's friends, another one was someone my brother had worked with. So I kind of got their input, and you got a chance to see, how their companies work, how their brokers, who are, your managing broker is the person who, kind of monitors how you do your business from a legal standpoint. Um, and I got to see, okay, I would not want to work for that company. I need
Mm,
more support. I
okay.
would not want to work for that company. It's just a little too loosey goosey. So you find the right fit for you, for your personality. And so the one that I went to, my first meeting I had with the broker and the assistant broker in the office. I believe there's about 40, between 40 and 50 agents in our office. And I mean, they were just so easy to talk to, so normal. I could tell right away that they were there to help me start my business. Um, they're always there for questions. I am texting my broker 9 o'clock on a Sunday night and
Mm-hmm.
she's answering.
Mm-hmm.
So, having people like that behind you when you just don't know what to do it's absolutely vital. I would be floundering if I had tried to make it on my own.
That's interesting to hear. So actually, maybe a piece of wisdom for someone thinking about getting into the industry would be actually don't just jump into the first company that you're aware of. Maybe interview some people who already work with those organizations
Absolutely.
respectively, and find out what it's like. And maybe the first one isn't the right fit, and maybe not even the
Yeah.
second or third one. In today's
The
day and
bro
age, the internet has changed a lot of things, as we know. And there are a lot of smaller, when I say smaller, I mean that respectfully. There are a lot of smaller independent brokerages and firms that are just starting up with go getter agents who want to do things what they think is a better way than what the company was they came from.
Mhm.
And so, because of technologies and a lot of things, they're able to be actually pretty competitive in a world that used to be dominated by a couple of big names. And
Yeah.
that's actually kind of cool. People are able to kind of be who they really want to be. And because of that, you might not know the company you're going to join. It might be someone you haven't heard of yet who just is in that other county over there, but they're cranking it out and they might not even be advertising, but that doesn't mean they're not being productive and producing a lot.
Yeah. And not that it's being disloyal, but let's say you spend 2, 3, 5 years at one brokerage and you find once again your personality,
Right.
your situation in life has evolved or changed. you know, Find another brokerage that then fits your needs, your goals, what you're going for. I mean, it's not easy to just quick, flip to someone else. And I'm not, saying you should be disloyal, but
Yeah.
you just, you have to do what's right. I mean, it's what's right for you.
If you
And
don't,
there are so many out there.
there are. And if you don't jive well or gel well with the principals or the people that are in your
Hmm.
particular organization, I would certainly imagine that's going to show up in your life in not great ways eventually. Like
Right.
you can't prosper and do well when you have stress from something that you're dealing with that's really never going to go away. And I can see why people do on occasion move on because the time is right.
Yep.
And sometimes there are good reasons for that from both sides of the table.
And so many of the times that I've changed a job, I loved the people I worked with. I hated the work I did. And so that's always difficult. Now, I love the work I do. And, the people around me are a fantastic support. Although, for the most part, when you're self employed, you have to be your own cheerleader, so that's another piece of advice. Just you can't let yourself give up. You can have highs and lows, but learn to ride the waves. You can't fight against them. You just got to roll with them and just keep going.
So it's not for the faint of heart, you're saying?
No, no,
You
it's
mean
not.
you mean being a realtor isn't like falling off a log and instantly you're successful?
No, not whatsoever. Let me tell you. So we have to renew our license every 2 years at the middle of December, I think it is. And there are plenty of people, their last day is around December 1st because they don't want to pay the fees to renew their license because
Really?
it just didn't make it. Yeah,
Wow.
it's it's kind of the weeding out time.
Yep. Well, and it probably like if you're committed, you're going to show up and keep going no matter what happens. And I mean, the people that I know that are doing well are people similar to yourself where they're in it for the long term and their vision sees past the next month or 2 months or
Yes.
even 6 months or even a year.
Yep.
And which brings me to my next question, which is where do you see yourself going from here?
So I am still, in my first few years of um, real estate. So we are enjoying the flips. My husband and I, we spend a lot of time together, which, some might say it's too much time, but we're still doing okay. So, I'm still loving what I do.
Hmm.
Eventually I might lean towards, I mean, you consider flips like an investment. I might lean a little towards rentals. Maybe we'll buy a few rental properties. After a couple years, maybe move into commercial properties, as opposed to just residential. But I see myself another 10 plus years in real estate in general.
Well,
Yeah.
what would you say is if you had to give someone um, just a piece of wisdom in general for their own career in this industry? What's something that has served you well that you think would help someone else?
So I think this is a lesson I've actually learned just like within the last 5 years or so. You have to just be yourself. You can't pretend to be someone else. You can't pretend to fit in. Just be who you are. Don't let somebody else dictate, how you make your way through life or what you're doing next. You know, just be you. I spent so much time in my teenage years, trying to figure out who I was, and then in my teens or my 20s, trying to be someone I wasn't. In my 30s, I kind of got a little too out of control as far as my personality. Now that I'm in my 40s, it's like I'm really happy with who I am these days. So
Awesome.
it's too bad. It's too bad that teenagers and young people can't always find that same contentment. But
It's hard to do when you're young.
just it is, yeah, just keep working towards it because you're gonna find that spot in life where you're like, "You know what? I love me. I love who I am, where I am, what I'm doing."
Wow. So I'm going to have your information. Um, you don't have to go over it now for the video, but I'll have it below in the description. Wherever you're watching
Okay.
this podcast today, audience today, you can just find it down there. You can reach Julie. And Julie, real quick, what do you like doing the most for anyone who's out there who's maybe thinking about buying or selling, or like what are your strong points?
I really like helping people buy houses. This is a terrible market to buy a house right now, but, I like taking them around to look at different properties, helping them imagine their life there at that house, kinda working our way through the deal or the transaction after that. Um, I know they say listings are life, and I like listings too, don't get me wrong, but working with those buyers and helping them find their next dream home or where they have to be next is what I've really loved doing so far.
Cool. And it's okay if people reach out to you, even if they're not ready to list or buy right now, but are just kind of kicking it around or just want to think about it. That's cool with you.
Oh, absolutely. Anybody brings up anything around the real estate industry, and I just
Yep.
attack them with information inadvertently. I don't mean to do that, but it just spews out. So if you have any questions or, just want to know what's going on in the market, what's is now a good time to buy, just those basic questions, I am happy to share information. Texting, phone call, email,
So you've
anywhere.
got the knowledge, you've got the tools. They just have to reach out, and I think they will. And I'm thankful that you joined us today. Thanks for hopping on for as long as you did, and we
Sure.
will look forward to seeing you soon. You have a wonderful day, Julie.
All right, great. Thanks. Bye, Noah.